Hello, everyone, and welcome to Crescendo, a podcast that amplifies the voices of women in business. I'm your host, Rachel Lipchansky, and I am delighted to be on this journey with you. In each episode, we speak with women who have moved through the challenges and the triumphs of living a life that is in alignment with who they are at their core. You'll hear from women who are breaking down barriers, making a difference in the world, and living a life of purpose on purpose. I hope that the crescendo stories you hear on this show will inspire you, empower you, and guide you to step into the most authentic, full, and beautiful expression of your own voice. Today's guest is Emily Lauren Lapine, a Las Vegas-based performer, magician, and international author of A Fairy Godmother's Wish. This original 32-page fairy tale is filled with fun, colorful illustrations highlighting a positive message about hard work and practice. Since writing the book, Emily performs as the title character of Miss Fairy G in full school assemblies, a show designed for pre-K to fifth graders. Her assembly focuses on the importance of social-emotional learning as well as maintaining a growth mindset. Emily is also an actress who's been performing professionally since graduating from the Del Arte International School of Physical Theater in 2003. Welcome, Emily. I am so happy to have you on the show, and I can't wait to share more of your story with our listeners.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. Thank you for the introduction. I love that living a life on purpose with purpose on purpose. I like that. So thank you. Thank you for everything you're doing, amplifying voices of women. I think it's really exciting and I'm excited to be here. So thank you.
Oh, thank you. Okay, so you are a multi-talented performer living in Las Vegas. Tell us a little bit more about yourself and how your career as a performer began.
Okay, so my career in performing started when I was young. I was a figure skater and it caught the performing bug for me pretty young. Admittedly, I wasn't the best athlete, so my performance journey has evolved from loving the routines of the figure skating, loving the outfits, not being the greatest athlete. That was my big dream, was to get cast with Disney on Ice right out of high school. It didn't happen, and so I ended up going to college, which was very disappointing for me. But I did. I went to college. I kind of floundered around until I ended up getting a theater degree. And I was always feeling like, for me, it's always been not quite understanding where I fit in and always feeling like I had to find the journey on my own, which led me to a school, the Del Arte School, which is a very fancy name for a clown school. So it is the Del Arte International School of Physical Theater, but a big part of it is physical comedy and clown and creating one's own material. And that was really the thing that hooked me in. It was designed for performers that, don't necessarily want to do Shakespeare or go to LA and go that route, but that are really committed to creating material. And that was always, to me, was really exciting. And so I, uh, I was in, when I graduated from there, the burlesque world was kind of becoming the exciting thing for performers to create, and comedy, and being a woman in comedy and what that meant. And so I kind of floundered around, had been floundering, my 20s, 30s until I finally more feel at home. I've always wanted to come to Las Vegas. I felt like it was the perfect place for somebody that it's the entertainment capital of the world, but it's also the types of shows out here are not necessarily traditional. They're not Broadway. They're like off Broadway shows, which suits me really well. So I have been really proud to be in some shows here in Vegas. But it's still that drive to I'm doing other people's shows, even my husband. I'm in my husband's show. We work every night in a hypnosis show. It's really fun. It's still, me being a part of his passion, which has become my passion, but it's always me wanting to have my own show, to create my own material. And I kind of matured out of the burlesque era into more being working with kids, which I know is quite the extreme jump. But for me, it really has always been about expressing myself and connecting with people. And yeah, that's a little bit of how it got started.
Amazing. So, yeah, I actually want to go back to that idea of the way that you express yourself and finding that way of connecting with people. I think that that's actually like the very definition of finding your voice. And you talked
Mhm.
about sort of being this floundering wanderer through your 20s and 30s. When did you first realize the power of your voice? And do you think that shift, how do you think that that journey evolved for you to get to where you are today, where you feel like you've come into your own?
I love, starting with that finding your voice because if I'm going to be honest, for me, it wasn't always whimsical and creative. It almost came out of anger of being looked at and being judged by the way I looked, being hypersexualized at a young age and not being very shy. I was actually a very shy person. I still am. Um, but being able to find my voice meant, wait a minute, I get to control the dialogue. I'm going to tell you how I want you to look at me, not the other way around. I was very uncomfortable. I grew up being like a very nice and sweet girl. I caused anyone any trouble, but, it always, the comedy in me, the comedian actually, it came out of anger and wanting to like set the record straight and be like, this is who I am and this is what I have to say without, you know, you telling me how I look or what you think about me, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, totally. I guess I'm trying to figure out, like, it takes courage to be that sweet girl who was sort of the, rule follower, certainly on the outside, didn't want to ruffle any feathers, to the person who's like going to claim that women can be in comedy.
Yeah, I agree. it just kind of coming from the modesty, like, and I still am modest even talking about myself at times. I get very uncomfortable, like, oh, I don't want to. I like humility and I feel very humble, but I think sometimes women we put this like veil on us that keeps us from feeling like, wait a minute, like it's okay that I do have a voice and I have an opinion and I want to control the dialogue. So I I think, yeah, thank you. I do believe it takes courage to do it. And I'm excited for people to do.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you think that there was like was there a moment or a pivotal experience where you were more comfortable, you found yourself more comfortable in shifting into the person who's just going to kind of pursue the direction that you always had within you, but had kind of held back on?
Uh, yes, I think again, kind of that anger motivated me. I remember being in like my first relationship when I was young and I was with a man that it almost felt like I was watching him have a relationship with me instead of like being fully present in it. And I just remember being like, you know what? Like, you can keep talking, but I'm not actually connected. I didn't feel like an equal and feeling like, I'm not on the right path. Like, I just, for me, it was and I feel like I've made some sacrifices. Maybe I've shut people out that, had I gone a little bit more follow the fold, I wouldn't have. But for me, it was always like, keep your eye on the prize. Like, I'm going to be true to myself. I've always had that internal compass, I believe, that was like, no, like, I want to stay true to myself. I don't want other people controlling my narrative. And I do feel like there's been sacrifices, but for me, it was always as long as I felt like I was in the direction that I wanted to do and pursuing what I wanted to, then money didn't matter. Like nothing outside mattered. Like I was okay with being poor as long as I felt like I had my freedom to create. So,
Yeah. I think that that's the ultimate freedom, right?
mhm.
Is being able to live and speak your truth. There really is nothing more freeing or fulfilling than that.
Yeah, I agree. I
So,
agree.
what kind of challenges did you face in using your authentic voice and in speaking up in those situations where you felt like you were confronting these obstacles and the pushback from others, perhaps?
Um, I think a lot of it has been even my own obstacles. Like oh, my own mindset has been, always like most of the problems are in between your own ears, like your own confidence and struggling. Like I feel like a lot of it's probably been imagined, like, oh, these obstacles that have been kind of from my own insecurity. So I would say overcoming my own insecurity has probably been the thing I struggle with the most. Like, I don't feel like anyone's ever had their thumb on me. I did have a divorce. So that was probably I liberated myself from another bad relationship that wasn't feeling like I was being supported in, and that grew on me. It was like a good decade there of not quite working out. But yeah, as life is, I always like to take full responsibility for my own actions. And I think just having that constant, I feel like from the outside, oh, everything together. I do all these shows and, at every step, it takes years and those obstacles, I would say a lot of it comes from mindset in my own that I'm doing a show about mindset for kids. And I feel like I've come up with a way to kind of simplify it and talk about it. But looking back now, I'm like, oh, it's my own mindset a lot of the time. Like it's something I think we all struggle with, and I certainly have and do. So
Yeah. So you were just alluding to the show. You are Miss Fairy G, this beautiful, sweet character. Tell us a little bit more about Miss Fairy G. Who is she?
it started. It was interesting. So I started right after I got married again in 2016 to my current husband. We were doing a show and we have a hypnosis show. And I had this vision, and it actually came from, we're downtown Las Vegas. I was at the time, I was the hostess of the hypnosis show. So people would come in, I would take their tickets and seat them, and just all these people walking by. And I remember kind of having insecurity about like, if I looked beautiful, if someone else was going to come into the show that looked more beautiful, or, just a bunch of kind of negative self talk. And I remember this woman walked by and she had a guitar case and she looked so confident and she knew where she was going. And just like at that moment, I just saw this woman with this confidence in this instrument. And I had this vision of like, oh my gosh, I want to play violin in the show. And that started me on a journey at 37 years old, picking up a musical instrument that I had never played before. I'm not much of a musical. This was me starting at zero. I couldn't read music. Since learned, I definitely do not have perfect pitch, but it started me on a journey of learning the violin. So in this struggle, I ended up creating a character, a fairy godmother that at the same time, it kind of came together of, possibly doing princess birthday parties, but I had the, like, I'm getting long in the tooth. I'm not trying to like be the little mermaid or, I didn't really want to dress up as a princess. I was like, I want to be the fairy godmother. The kids are the princesses. Long story, it ended up with me writing a book called A Fairy Godmother's Wish. And that's the book where it's this fairy godmother and she's always granting wishes to other people, but really she has a secret wish of her own, and that is to play the violin. And so, her friends help her and she realizes that following her own dreams and working hard, it's not just somebody grants you a wish, but it's the hard work that's actual magic. So it started me on the journey of like, okay, now I'm this fairy godmother. I wrote this kid's book. Um, and then I started volunteering, sharing it at schools. We have Nevada Reading Week here where we are, it's like the 1 week where everyone really focuses on stories. So I would volunteer for a long time. And then it started me on the journey of magic because, of course, you're a kid and kids are amazing to perform for. They're very honest. Like, oh, you're a fairy godmother? Like, prove it. And so, they immediately want, like, do some magic and they're going to challenge you. So it's like, okay, now I'm on a journey of doing magic. And she has grown that way. It's been fun too.
Yeah, I love that. I love the vision of you, like, seeing it's almost like you having a vision of yourself outside of your body, like, in this out-of-body
Mhm.
experience of seeing this woman walk into the theater with a guitar and a whole load of confidence, and you're like,
Yeah.
"I can be her. Maybe I
Yes.
am her." Um, I find that that's a common experience, not that specific one, but just this idea that there's, like, almost this visceral shift that happens internally where we're like, "Oh, yeah, that's available to us," right? It doesn't have to be just them.
Yep. It wasn't even about the instrument. It's just, yeah, it was that confidence and being like, I don't want to be afraid. I want my own thing. And the violin was like
Mm.
something else tangible, like something I could have, like real skill that I have that
Yeah, that's amazing.
perfect
That's
for
so
it.
amazing. Yeah, and I love that you're just, like, walking, you're walking the walk. So, when you go into these schools and you talk about the work and putting that in and putting your mind to something and, changing your mindset and growth mindset and all of that, it's like you have all this great experience and these beautiful stories to illustrate that. Okay, so you have this donkey voice model as, I guess, part of your show. Tell us what this is.
So, the donkey voice model is well, when I during the pandemic, when there were no shows going on, everything was closed down, I did end up working as support staff in a school. And in the school, they had growth mindset lessons, which I had never seen before. So it was actually getting to teach these lessons about something I hadn't heard before that I clicked with immediately. And the kids at that time, they would do, the teacher would give an example like, um, you know, uh, I like learning. And if it was like, is that a growth mindset, hacky dog, or a fixed mindset? And the kids would be like, she would read an example of, you know, uh, I'm not smart enough to learn something. And oh, that's a fixed mindset. And the kids would go like this, or a growth mindset, and they would touch their heads. And I was like, just that really simple concept clicked with me. And over time, it has become I'm someone that loves storytelling and I love puppets. I was working on my show and so I have a lot of puppets and I had this little finger puppet donkey and it's just this little on my finger. Um, and I was like playing. I have this one where I'm like drawing this picture and the picture comes to life. And I was drawing it and I was like, looking at it and it wasn't lined up properly. And I was almost discovering it through improv, like, hey, that's not a very good drawing. Like, you should stop. And I was like, oh, it's this little donkey. And I was like, this little mean donkey that, kind of, he became my donkey voice. And it's like, constantly trying to fight, like, hey, you're not good at that. And being like, hey, actually, no, I'm going to put the donkey voice away. I do have a choice. And, it's not perfect, but I'm working on it and it looks good. And then that kind of evolved into, it was the opposite of donkey voice, which is, that negativity. And it was like a unicorn voice. Like, you can believe in yourself and you can do hard things. And there are things that you just can't do yet. And so that having the dichotomy of my donkey to unicorn became like the crux of my show. It's the crux of the magic where, so now I have these donkey puppets that start small and they get bigger and bigger. I have it starts as a finger puppet and I have a hand puppet. And then there's a local puppet theater here that made me this donkey head. And it's this like great big head on my head that I think is like, oh my gosh, no, this is a really big one. And I think it's fun for the kids to see me struggle because I'm really honest, just like I do. I still, it's in my act, like, oh no, that's bad. And then the kids, by the end of it, they're rooting for me, like, you can do it. And we take the big donkey and we change it into unicorn voice and we change it into a big happy unicorn. So I try to get the kids involved. I bring them on my journey. I think it's maybe surprising to the kids, but I don't, I'm not lecturing about it, but they're more able to witness me going through it and struggle with my own donkey voice that I think by the end of it, one of the strongest moments for me is after the very first donkey voice comes. I'll say, "Oh no, it's my donkey voice. It's that voice that says I'm not doing very good, even when I'm trying really hard." And then I'll say, "Okay, by show of hands, here has a voice like that sometimes in their head. So raise your hand," and I'll say, "Don't say anything, but look around. See how many people that have that voice as well, and like even some of your teachers have their hands up. Just talking about like, oh, it's that voice in your head that we all have, but it's a very strange thing to talk about, especially with kids, that we all experience that kind of negative self-talk. So that's actually probably become my favorite moment in the show, and a little more about where the donkey voice came from.
Yeah. Yeah. It's so cool. And honestly, it's not just kids, right? We all have that voice within us. And it's a matter of learning how to control it and learning how to shift the narrative and make the choices about what we want to believe that it's telling us versus sort of putting in a box and closing the door on those thoughts. And so I think it's so powerful to hear you talk about bringing these mindset ideas, right? Really simplifying them for our youth. I'm curious what your thoughts are on how you think this might shape who they become and their ability to really tap into who they are, maybe at younger ages than a lot of us did or were able to, because we didn't have the foundation, the understanding of what is going on in our brains and how to really navigate that.
Yeah, I don't think we did either. I mean, I'm very happy. I think we talk about mental health and being tolerant of people with different neurodivergencies way differently than we did. Certainly growing up, I feel like we were all, comparing more on it, whether it was academically or I just didn't think it was talked about very much either, unless there was a major problem. But I think just I think it can be very powerful recognizing, teaching kids that they're not alone and that they can recognize their negative thoughts and make a choice to act on them. And I think that could be really powerful. I'm at the beginning of that journey, and I'm still as it now to me. It's of course always ironic, almost as I'm like trying to get the word out there about this, being stuck with my own. I'm like constantly reminded, like, okay, like don't let your donkey voice, like you need to reach out, but that is sometimes I love the show creation part, the performing part, but the business part, of getting the word out has been it, it's not something that I love. So it's something that I have to work on. Like the things that come easily are fun to practice. And the things that don't come easily, it's a constant push. So I have hope that it could be helpful for people, and that would be my ultimate goal and would feel really good. And that's what keeps me like, okay, you have to put yourself out there. You have to try to get the word out. But it's very personal and it's just you and a show and a fairy. Like it's you know sometimes it's a
I
little
love that. You and a
yeah,
show and a fairy.
yeah, like
Yeah, but
call this cool.
yeah, but this is so real, and this is really the a challenge that most women in business experience, if not everybody who's in business, is navigating all the what I call mind drama or brain trash that comes our way. And, each of us has like our gifts, our unique talents, the areas where we feel like we excel, and then the areas that are just so challenging for us. And so obviously you're sharing that so beautifully with the youth, these young children. And it's great to hear you talking about that here just in full transparency and with pure vulnerability that even when we do step into our voice and hearing you like find your way and to the point where you've been able to develop a program that really sounds quite magical indeed, and you're still experiencing it and to just normalize that that is part of the entrepreneurial journey. So thank you for sharing that and just being really honest about it.
Yeah, thank you. I hear people talk about the imposter syndrome, and I think we all agree, like, we feel that too. It's, you know, and yeah, it's like I said, it's fun to work on the parts you like, and then the parts you struggle with. Which for me, it's the technology, like showing up to the school and learning how to like, are they going to be able to hear me, and am I going to be able to plug in my sound, and trying to get really self sufficient, but also still, yeah, struggling and learning.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. And having it just be a little bit messy along the way sometimes.
yes,
Totally.
exactly.
I wanted to know, what impact would you say finding your voice has had on your life? Like finally landing on this thing, these gifts where you're able to use, your performance talents and your vision and your passion for just bringing joy to others. How has kind of the intersection of all of that enhanced your life?
So I think I'm grateful. I can always find the gratitude, and to me, I focus on that a lot. Uh, I'm happy for my journey. My journey was my own. I wouldn't necessarily trade it. Even the struggles and the obstacles. I think we all have our journey, and finally being at a place where I feel like the kind of the river is flowing, where I have an idea, a creativity, and it doesn't seem like there's a mountain in my way, but I have some outlets and I have people responding. It's a lot of gratitude, and I feel like it does affect my life a lot. I feel fortunate, and I it in a pretty good place. So it's good. It's a good thing to
That's
finally be
wonderful.
there. Yeah.
Yeah. And of course, as I always say, it's like the yes and, right? Like we can land within our voice and still have bigger dreams and visions and goals for ourselves. And I know that you are in the earlier stages of building Miss Fairy G, but she really sounds like the fairy godmother that our kids need. And I hope that you sharing your story here will bring more exposure to her and hopefully new opportunities to bring her into schools across the country. So thank you so much for being here. I just appreciate you sharing your story, and it's really beautiful to see how you've evolved from the young woman who went to school not really knowing what her direction would be, and to landing in a place that is really changing, I believe, changing lives for so many people.
Thank you, and I appreciate that. Thank you for having me. I think, a little more on your question, I'm, like, reflecting, like, "Well, how does it change your life?" I think another thing, like, to be proud of how far you've come, even if you don't, like, necessarily have the finish line, because I feel like the finish line's always as you grow, it's always going farther and farther. There's no real end point. So, it's easy to like never be satisfied, but to at least be proud of how far you've come. I'm doing this today. Like I'm on a podcast. Like it's fun, and just to celebrate the little things sometimes without being too hard on yourself of what you haven't accomplished yet, like kind of the steps on the journey. So reminding myself to do that.
Absolutely. I was going to ask you one final question, which is something I ask all my guests. What is one tip you have for other women striving to honor their authentic voice? And you're welcome to elaborate on that. But I think what you just said was very valuable. It's recognizing how far you've come. It's honoring the micro moments, the celebrations, those small wins, any size, it's all working towards the bigger thing, the bigger vision. Is there anything else you want to add to that?
I think, yeah, that I love that question and asking that. And I do think that would be like a tip for women is, and men, but especially us. I feel like we're so much pressure on ourselves and, you know, to not compare yourself to anyone's journey, but like you said, to celebrate the small improvements, maybe to make lists. So you're constantly like checking off what you've done so you can see how far you've come. I think that is really important to be proud of yourself and the small things. And sometimes it's just getting out of bed and sending an email. Like, you know, it's a small thing. It's, that one thing that keeps like getting pushed off to the bottom of the list. Like, if you just start your day with that one thing, maybe the rest of it won't feel as difficult, but just know that like we're all imposters, we're all struggling, like we're all just faking it, but we are making it. So like keep going and just keep believing in yourself.
Mm, that's a great way to wrap. Thank you so much. How can people best connect with you to learn more about working with you or bringing Miss Fairy G to their school?
Yeah, my website is missfairyg.com. It's MISS, fairy and G for godmother. So my email is on there, phone number, welcome to reach out. I'm really interested, especially talking to educators, teachers that have young kids, even parents that have young kids. Like I like hearing the flow of back and forth. Like, is this resonating with your kids? Is there any improvement? So I'm always still growing and happy to hear feedback. But Facebook, Instagram, I'm on there as well. Facebook, it's a fairy godmother's wish. On Instagram, I'm at Miss Fairy G. So hopefully easy to find. Books on Amazon. It ships worldwide.
Awesome. And I will link all of that to the show notes. To our listeners, thank you so much for tuning in. We really appreciate you being here with us. If this episode struck a chord or generated some sort of an insight that you'd like to capture, we would love it if you would comment, like, or share this episode. And don't forget to hit subscribe button so you don't miss future shows. Until next time, keep sharing your voice.